Welcome to the first episode of Mandala. I'm Hanan Daka. Our first guest is one of Alexandria's living legends, Marga Fripp. Welcome, Marga.
Thank you.
I really can't say enough about how I feel about your organization, Empowered Women International. I believe what sets your organization apart from others is that it does not only empower women, but it sheds light, probably for the first time in American society, on immigrant women life, unique story and challenges, and empower those women. Now, I really have so many questions about your journey and your organization. And let's start with your childhood. As an icon of empowerment today, who empowered you as a child?
Well, thank you for all this beautiful introduction and the first heartfelt question. You know, I think it's my great-grandmother. It's often I do think about where did this seed of empowerment come from, and I was very blessed to have a great-grandmother who believed in me. She raised me for a couple of years along with my mom, but I had spent some quality time with my great-grandmother. And she had the ability, even though she had very little education, she had the ability to see potential, and to see potential in me at a very early age. We grew up very poor with very minimum resources, and to have someone as astute and wise as my great-grandmother to say, you can do whatever you want to do with your life, just be sure you follow your heart, I think had given me permission early on to accept my own truth and to discover my own journey.
Yeah.
And so,
you know, I'm curious about empowerment when it comes to women, because at one point in my life, I analyzed women, strong women, and I thought, oh, maybe, and even I wrote an article that titled Behind Every Great Woman, and I thought her father. I thought the father is the one behind every great woman. So do you think your grandmother was supported by her father somehow? And I don't know, do you think? No?
not in my story, no.
No, so you
I
don't...
wish there was an instrumental father figure. Not really, no. In fact, in the family I know, my relatives and great-great-parents didn't quite have strong fatherly figures. And I cannot, this is something that gives me subject of reflection. It's been always the woman figure, and perhaps it's because of the role women play in societies that are struggling to overcome poverty and discrimination. My great-grandmother had to support her family. She didn't have a choice, but I did have a very supportive great-grandfather, but I wouldn't say that he was instrumental or that my great-grandmother had a father that was instrumental. In fact, I don't recall from our stories who her father was. I don't think my great-grandmother ever mentioned to me her father, which is very interesting.
Wow.
So I wonder whether whether she grew up with a father, you know?
So now also I have, I wonder if she empowered you, did she empower your mother?
A very important question. Well, I think in my family, empowerment skipped one generation. It skipped my mother a little bit. And I think maybe the seed got to me just so I can go back and help my mother. My mother is probably one of the reasons. So my great-grandmother was the seed of inspiration and transformation. And I think my mother was the seed of, I have to fix a lot of the things in the world. You know, while my great-grandmother said you can do it, my mother said there's a lot of work to be done. And I think my mother was the figure that demonstrated that women needed empowerment, that women needed a voice, that they needed to act on their power, that they needed education, they needed to be driven by something greater than I don't know, family responsibility or societal responsibility, that inner power. My mother didn't really have a choice, I guess, to really work on her inner power. She had to feed her children. And so pretty much everything else was left into the hands of the divine.
So probably she was able, I think maybe the relationship with a grandchild is different.
Right.
The age being a grandmother, you are more relaxed, more able to connect. Or maybe she was able to connect with you as a person.
Yeah, it's so true. My mother had a lot of work. My mother couldn't afford to think about the greater vision for life.
Wow.
She was in a survival mode. She had to move from one day to another. She had only primary education. She raised 2 children during her first 30 years, and then she had twins at the age of 40. She had a lot on her plate every day, and because of the little resources she grew up, or she had the little education, the little guidance and knowledge, her survival mode dictated that she's got to raise her children, and that meant, you know, feeding, clothing, putting them through school, and that was my mother's job. Where my great-grandmother, I think she was in a very different kind of shoes, where she could look to the future and say, what is going to happen with these children if they don't really continue education, if they don't really know where they belong, if they don't really look into the future and search for what they're meant here for. But so yeah, that was my great-grandmother. My mother's job was a complete different.
So in your opinion, what transforms women? What is that thing that, because I noticed in your organization, you really transformed many of these women. My first impression was, wow, how these women has been transformed. I mean, when I look at them, I think they are just even, you know, they were transformed. The way you hear about their stories, their background, to come up the way, you know, they end through after your training, or so I want to know, what do you think is the power of transformation? Where does it come from?
It's another very deep question. I think there is a lot to that, but if there is one word that can help everybody understand what possibly could, and it may not work for everybody, but I think we have a process at Empowered Women International that is driven by a lot of exceptional women that are waking up every day to be in the life of another woman who's searching for her inner force, right? So I think what we're working at is to develop confidence. Now, confidence is not something one necessarily may be born with or is given overnight. It's a process of transformation, as you're saying. And I think at the basis of that transformation is inspiration.
Okay.
And it may not be true for everyone, but it seems to be the truth that I'm discovering. Everybody that I meet, wherever I meet, whether it's in the United States or around the world, when I have a chance to talk to women in particular and to share my story and to share my journey and what I believe and what I've learned, I see that everybody's looking, their eyes are lighting up when we talk about personal things that they connect with. The inspiration, the seed of inspiration grows inside, which actually gives them permission to act on their own passion. We all have passions and dreams and ideals, and we grow up with them. We know them as young children, right? You knew what you wanted to be when you were 3 years old, and then 7 years old, and so on. But down the road in life, things become very difficult. Life changes gears from left to right. You move from one country to another. Your status changes. You may be wealthy at some point. You may be poor at another point. You have education. You may lose the opportunity to exercise your right of exercising that education depending where you live and what kind of status, right? So life is changing, and I think all those layers of complexity and experience somehow chip away or deteriorate that the glow within, the what I wanted to be when I was a young child, the inspiring seed of becoming somebody one day, right? And so when women reach Empowered Women International, suddenly we're listening to that seed of inspiration, what they want to be, what they want to do with their life, and we validate their purpose, and that gives them permission to act on that purpose. So in other words, it doesn't matter if the mother-in-law, if the father, if anybody gives them permission, they are granted inner permission to act on their passion. And I think once that happens and women go out and do the things that they want to do, it's not for the money, it's not for anything else, but just because they gotta listen to that voice within, the confidence is rising. Once the confidence is risen and the women own that, then they give back. And this is where we see the ripple effect, the multiplier effect, right? So once they're inspired and they have permission to act on their passion and purpose, then they are confident and then they give back. So you see, it's a cycle. And that's exactly what you see in every woman at Empowered Women International. We're a small organization, but we're mighty in our way in which we seed, we self-seed our spirit of service and community and empowering other women to follow their own inner voice.
Marga, as a way to measure your success as an entrepreneur, as a leader, may I ask you how much is your salary?
Yes, my salary this year is about $80,000. The truth about my salary is that I haven't paid myself for 7 years. I only started to pay myself in 2009. And my first salary in 2009, I started the organization in 2002. My first salary in 2009 was $10,000.
Wow.
So in about 6 years, we managed to grow the organization and to begin to reward my staff as well as myself. So to be an entrepreneur, it's a journey.
Wow, wow.
But thank you for asking.
Thank you for sharing, because it will help us know how hard it is also to reach that point. But at one point you reach to, if I will ask you now, the decision to leave now, why?
That's a very long answer. How do I say it short? It's time. I'm a pioneer. I'm a builder. I build things based on my vision and calling, and my work here is complete. I have done everything I was called to do, and I'm being asked to pursue the journey ahead and to be of service in some other place, which I don't know yet, but I know it will be revealed soon. So
many people think that maybe you will come back. I don't know why. I wish you will have the best anywhere. Anyway, we'll see.
Well, I will never leave as the founder, right? I mean, this is my baby, so I will continue to support in any way I can. But no, my time as the executive director, it's done.
Yeah.
And I'm moving on.
To new journeys.
To new journeys, yes. Women need us everywhere in the world, so I want to be of service.
I think it is very hard to follow your heart and to listen to that little voice. From my own experience, I think it takes a lot of courage, because there are so much pressure from society, from everything, to have a plan, design, to face challenges, that you can't listen to that little voice. It's very little, but it is very empowering once you connect with that voice. So I don't know, I think you are doing a great job with connecting them to this and getting them back to think of what they like, what their passion is. My other question is, when you came first to America, I know that you went through a very hard time. You did not even realize that life will be that hard for you. The same with me. I mean, it's amazing, or I think how these women, immigrant women, come to something they don't know, and it's harder than what many people think. So at that stage, the first year, what was the first thing that you hanged onto that empowered you, took you somewhere. For me, it was the library. Going to the library and being able to read books, because I felt lost, really. The first year I came here, I felt lost. Where are my roots? Where is my confidence? Who I am? I started to have feelings that I never, had before. So I don't know where this coming from. So I started to really, I want to know who I am again. And when I had this opportunity to go to the library and read these books, wow, I started to rebuild myself, reinvent myself.
Right.
So this was, my point.
Seed of inspiration.
Exactly.
Right.
For you.
It's another complex question, and that's why I have to write a book so I can piece it all together. I think for me has been a lot that played into finding my voice. Like you, I shared the journey of this empowerment. I didn't speak English when I came here. Everything was very unfamiliar, and I came with a very sick child who I had to
Demanding.
go to children's hospital every week. I didn't drive. Everything was mission impossible for me. Every morning I woke up, I saw another day of failure, basically. It was, what am I going to fail at today? What is it going to happen today? What's going to make me embarrassed today, basically?
Wow.
And I came with a very successful career as a broadcast journalist in my country, as a women's rights activist, very successful in my own right. I had no expectations whatsoever to feel so lost and disempowered. But I think this takes us back to what we were talking originally about I guess, being displaced in the world. I mean, there's different kinds of displacement. You can be displaced as a child in your own family. You can be displaced in your own culture, or you can be displaced because you are uprooted from your own environment, your own country, right? And I think for me, coming to this country was a lot of displacement. There were layers of displacement. So I was a banned broadcast journalist in my country, so I wasn't allowed to practice anymore. I was very, very successful at initiating legislation to protect women from domestic abuse. When I left the country, I felt displaced because I started this whole movement. We had the legislation in motion. We were very close, and I had to go. So I felt displaced from that source of creation. Another important work that I've done that I felt like I left incomplete. My son was very sick, and that's actually the reason for which we came to the United States, to save his life. So he immediately took precedent and priority. So I felt displaced from my own child that I birthed, because he was very sick and he was hooked up to the machines rather than to his own mom. And then, of course, put myself in an environment that is completely unfamiliar, where I don't speak or understand anything, yet I have to perform every day. And I'm a career woman on top of everything. I didn't know what to do other than, there seems to be a lot of problems around. Somebody's got to get to work, and I couldn't secure a job. So it was kind of failure after failure after failure, only to realize that I was actually here for a reason. So you see, for me, it was important that I was first crucified and then resurrected, kind of thing, because every day I failed. It was a day toward my determination to make it happen. So I didn't speak English, and my role in that process was to go and learn to speak English. It was as basic as that. I mean, people were very kind and nice, but I couldn't communicate. They couldn't quite understand. It was a struggle. So every struggle, every barrier became a source of determination. In other words, as I was losing light, I was also gaining light and force and energy, right?
Wow.
Yeah, so I don't know how to explain this. It's sometimes, you have to be in the dark to see the light, and not sometimes, most of the time, It doesn't always, empowerment doesn't happen in the most beautiful, shining place. It happens in this darkest corners of life, when you somehow pull in and reflect and reimagine and reinvent, as you're saying, and kind of realize that you're not alone. There's so many other people out there. And if not for your own good, or for the sake of yourself or your family, for the sake of others who need you as an inspiration. So you see, that seed of inspiration was, my grandmother contributed, and many, many, many other people contributed of putting that seed in there and letting it take time to sprout and to grow, and it never stopped growing.
Yeah, but it sounds to me like your experience before coming to America in the legislation, it gave you some empowerment, or
some guts. It gave me some guts.
Yes, yes, something. Because you felt that wow, I did something, and then it has to stop because.
Yeah.
But I think the spark started there. I think of change.
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, I was a very young and foolish, and thank goodness I was. You know, those are the kind of things we learn as young people, and once you realize your voice, it never goes away. I did pay a hefty price for my, attitude and the work that I've done to, upset important people, but it was the right kind of work. It's work that had informed my entire career. My whole life I worked for social justice, and I will never stop, because it is what I've seen when I was 20 working in media. Street children and orphans and people with disabilities that nobody cared for. And I was able to cover this for about 2 years until everybody got sick and tired that we were disclosing too much truth that became eventually very uncomfortable.
So probably, I think, did you grow up in the communist
Yes.
Atmosphere where
Right.
social reform and caring is a value?
Right.
And then probably I know that after the post-communist,
Right.
things went totally different.
Very
and maybe this is why
different.
you were resisting this change.
Very different. Well, it's supposed to have been a good change, right? So I was...
It's supposed to, but...
Right. I was working in media in 1994, 1995, so this is about 6 years after the fall of the communism. So you think that we would have healed somewhat, we would have learned some lessons. But in my time in media, we had the neo-communist party, so the old guard wasn't dead yet. They had one more thing to do, and one more thing, and the country is struggling even today with a lot of difficulty, with a lot of corruption, with a lot of the old guard infiltrated in the new direction. And I think those are things that scar societies, cultures, people. People in my country are still unstable.
Even though it's...
even though it's a democracy, even though people have a voice, in the end, there is a corrupt system that doesn't seem to go away, no matter how democratic we are. And I think this is what I've witnessed early on, and this is something I couldn't bear, close my eyes and move on.
And why you were not able to just move on? Is it the way you grow up in a
well, yeah,
social? I mean,
sure. I mean, I mentioned that I grew up simple roots. We grew up poor. We just didn't know we were poor. I mean, everybody probably was poor, with few exceptions, right? We grew up with very little resources. We grew up with minimum food. You know, you buy bread and a couple of vegetables, and meat was a prime resource, and it wasn't available to working families like my parents. My mom raised us herself, you know, didn't have a spouse to help along the way. My mom ended up being a survivor of domestic abuse her whole life, but not only my mom, but pretty much everybody in my community, in my neighborhood. I've seen poverty again and again at different levels of society. I had colleagues in my high school who have been sold in prostitution. I've seen women being raped at a very early age, and I just couldn't close my eye on this. I just couldn't. I mean, of course, as a young child, you can't do too much, but you absorb and you're being influenced. So I was very fortunate to work in media at an early age in a time when, you know, everything was privatized, and where people didn't quite, it wasn't, media was just, it was such a beautiful, it was in a germination stage, you know, it was a seed of democracy, a seed of people's voices. And, and it wasn't quite, yet manipulated by political interests. But by the time I got into the thick of media, it became to be very politicized, right? And so in the beginning, I felt like I had a lot of freedom to tell the truth, and I thought that's what I was there for. And then within 2 years, I realized that my wings were so clipped that I could no longer fly, and that I could no longer tell stories, that I could no longer hold my voice. And not only that, but I could no longer work for anybody in media ever in my country. So I was stamped basically on my life passport. And we literally had a document in Romania that, you know, when you're being fired by a company, there's an article in the legislation that tells anybody who hires you next what kind of person you were. So I was fired under insubordination, and that was political insubordination, which is code for everybody not to hire you again because you're a troublemaker. And so I knew it was end of story for me with media, and that, you know, I needed to find another way to have a voice. And so media actually taught me that instead of being a newsmaker, I wanted to be a change maker. So yet another seed of inspiration where I could have been, you know, lost in a battle. I felt like I won the battle, that I found who I was, that I found my purpose, and that I can just move on. Of course, you never know what that means, but again, it's been given me permission to continue to seek that I was here for.
Through your organization, you empowered many Muslim and Arabic women. I did see many of them, many faces, many names, and you empowered them. Now when I look, because I know Muslim and Arabic women they have their unique story, probably unique culture, background. So do you think their challenges are different in any way?
Well, you probably know more than I know about
but
that
when you
subject.
empowered them, I mean, the process of empowering, was it the same for everybody?
It was absolutely the same. Of course, everybody's circumstances are very unique, particularly Muslim women in America may be very different than Muslim women living in their own cultures, right? No, in fact, I have to tell you that I have a lot of respect, not only for Muslim women, but for women in general. No matter where I went in the world, I went as far as Papua New Guinea. I find women to be pretty much the same wherever we go. It actually even doesn't matter what language you speak if you find the common denominator of who we are at our heart, right? We pretty much talk about the same kind of stories, the raising of our families, contributing to our societies, making a difference. Their struggles, right? I just mentioned domestic abuse has been something that has been with me. I grew up in a society like this. When I came to the United States, the first woman that I've met was a survivor of domestic abuse, and I was invited in court to translate, to interpret for her. It's been a story that I'm finding wherever I go in the world, and those are things that are coming to the surface as a woman. And with, you know, the economic power that we all are striving for, I find that the next story that we're forming is a story of freedom, that women participate in the economy, or want to participate in the economy, and often they're misplaced or the resources are not there. So I think when we begin to talk about anything from family to values to culture to identity to power in the market, there is a woman's story in there that there is somewhat common. And then there's the differences. And then there's the barriers, the why certain women can't access economic freedom, or why do they not have, you know, votes or more women in parliament, or so there is different nuances, but no, women around the world hurt in the same way, laugh in the same way, hold hands in the same way, give gratitude in the same way. I don't find differences, and I don't know whether it's just me or not, but I think that's another thing you're observing with Empowered Women International. We don't have borders, we don't have passports, we don't have identity. It's women.
Yeah, you know, also with Muslim women and Arabic women, I think they don't feel as comfortable opening up, and I think also they don't feel that they are accepted enough. Right. So to see them comfortable and learning, going the extra step to reach out.
Right.
This says something. I mean, about the organization, about you were able to connect to them, to motivate
but again,
them.
it's that exactly that permission to follow your heart. Our organization creates that, sense of permission. It gives women the inspiration, the validation, the permission to act on their dreams. And then, of course, it doesn't matter at that point if you're Muslim or if you're Jewish or if you're anything else, right? You are just going to act on who you are because you've seen all the sisters, thousands of them, doing just the same. And I think there is another element because we are so global in our approach and in our classrooms and in everything we do. Having a chance to talk to women who you otherwise may have not met or spoke about things that are very personal suddenly opens up, lifts the veil. It may appear that certain groups of women are more veiled, more covered than others, but in fact we all have layers and layers that are protecting the various things we have to hide or to not share with the world because we feel vulnerable. But when you're in a group with women where everybody wears the veil, where everybody is keeping stories of vulnerability, but then everybody feels like they need to share with each other because that's only when you share empowerment takes place. You see, suddenly everybody is enlightened, everybody wins, there's no loss. Everybody feels like we're accepted. We're no different. We belong. You see?
Yes. And this is important. I think also it is rare to see this. I think the way you understand immigrant women also, I do believe that immigrant women go through a very unique and challenges that is not well understood by society. There's a lot of hardship. I can't speak about myself. I went through so much. I mean, I get education, I try to volunteer, I try to work, but still I see doors closed. I do see challenges. I have family, I have kids. I feel at one point, I even felt at one point that this society is not built for me. You know when you feel this way? So, okay, that's fine. I'm good at reinventing myself. But when you think of average people or people who probably don't have English language or don't have education, how do they survive? I mean, they go through a lot. And when you I mean, limit their opportunities, how about their children?
Right.
And you oppress, you suppress the energy. And I think this affects the school, affects their education. Probably to make them have a voice, it takes many generations to make these immigrant families. They need many generations to feel okay. So, I mean, why this is, I mean, I feel, I have this question about American society now. Why the American society does not offer enough help for those immigrant families? The only thing that I see is free English language in the library, free English language in the church, free food. What's else? I mean, is this really? With you, I think you created a system. You understand those women. You know how to make them feel comfortable, welcomed, open up, work on their own, improve. So how can you communicate this to the American society?
Well, I think it's yet another complex issue. I personally believe that we have resources. There are resources that immigrant families can access. The trouble is, as with every immigrant, or particularly talking about immigrants now, people don't know where to begin. By the time you learn about the resources available to you, it's too late. You might have already moved in another state, or maybe you're sick and you don't know where to seek health insurance for your issue and you're getting sicker. There are many from language barriers to isolation, to not having a car, to not simply understanding and feeling embarrassed, and people don't seek out, and not everybody, I mean, it appears that everybody has a computer or a phone and internet, but quite not everybody has that. I mean, now I know people have phones, but but even that, they just don't know how to research for resources. Also, because with the places where we come from, in our countries, we don't have those resources. If you're poor, you die poor kind of thing. In America, there are resources, but people don't realize that there is something to hook onto. There is something to get it going with. They don't know the organizations that exist to support them, the faith-based community, the educational. You're very fortunate, and myself too. I love public libraries. I love everything about libraries, the smell of the books to the bookmobile that comes through the neighborhoods. And I thought, oh my Lord, this is the place to thrive. And yet with all this, many immigrants still do not know how to reach out. And I think that's why it's important that people like you and me need to serve, need to give back. We need to be the voice. You know, there is no day. I'm like a proselytizer. Wherever I go, I speak about the work that I do. I speak about the importance of reaching out, the importance of helping your neighbors, the importance of mentoring other women. Sometimes you're at the bus stop, and you spend 10 to 15 minutes and you see people sitting where they're reaching out. It's important that we put those cell phones down and we talk to people, because often those are the people that need most help. And I think it's as simple as that. I mean, I tried over the years to find kind of systemic ways to change. So once you entered Washington, D.C. airport, you pick up this flyer, that flyer, this brochure, that brochure. It didn't work. And it doesn't matter how many things you put in, how many strategic places. People have to own their own journey. People like you have to get out and reinvent themselves. And to be honest, you're right. If you don't have that kind of attitude about you, you get lost.
And most people don't.
And the majority of people have the tendency to get lost. But then you have organizations like Empowered Women International that exist in those communities. And we try to place ourselves in communities where you have most immigrants, more low income, where kids are going to schools in neighborhoods that there's low income families. So we can catch, all this community, so they can see us, so they can find us. But we're small. Of course, we need more of us. We need more volunteers. We need more entrepreneurs. We need more women to serve and give back. There is no systemic way to help everyone. It is very much, that's why I keep saying it's the power of one. Everybody who truly believes in the American dream and is a citizen of this country has a moral an ideological responsibility to give back and help the neighbor.
You mentioned the American dream. How real is the American dream for immigrant families? For you, I think it was. You achieved the dream. You started an organization and you took yourself way out. But how real is that?
I think it's also, again, it's all relative, because it's pretty much the American dream is what you're willing to put in. You only reap the rewards of what you invested, right? So it's up to you. The American dream is not granted. It's earned, right? But
do you think it's as easy?
No, I don't even think it's ever been easy. From the first settlers, nothing has been easy, right?
But it sounds like it is very hard. It's getting even harder.
I agree. I don't think it's ever been easier. I think probably at this point should have been easier, but it's not, because all this economic, political changes and challenges we've been having over the past, decade and a half or so. Ever since I came to the United States after September 11th, I've seen nothing but struggle in terms of economy and political decisions and what we do with our money and time and where we put our money and time. And so, no, it hasn't been easy, nor it will ever be easy. But think about people like you and I who leave our countries for whatever reason, whether we seek, medical help, whether we seek education, whether we seek freedom of expression. We have a place where we belong. Maybe not instantaneously. My story proves that I had to earn my place. Just because I came with credentials that I had, not everybody said, oh, Marga Fripp, here's an opportunity, go make your dreams come true. I had to work at it. I had to earn it. I had to, but isn't it true about anything in life that is worth, fighting or living for, right? It doesn't come easy. I mean, in my country, probably I could have done this, but I would have had to fight a lot of dragons and dinosaurs and creatures like ghosts that I don't even know who I'm fighting. In this country, I see an honesty in the approach we have about seeking our own destinations or making our own destination. And
is this real? I mean, really, I know you made your dream come true, but is it still, you believe everyone?
I believe in America.
Really? You
I believe and I will believe no matter where I am, no matter where I go. I am an American, well, I'm a global woman first, but I am an American at heart. I believe in the ideals of this country, and this is one of the reasons for which I stayed so long. I never intended to stay so long in the States, and probably I married an American citizen. I didn't necessarily think I needed to become one, but I became because I believed. For me, this country had touched me with its magic wand in exactly the place that I wanted to be touched, because as you're saying, I had the spark. I just needed to ignite that, and I think this place, it was a catalyst. It was the catalyst. It allowed me to be as wild in my imagination as I could be to create this place for women. Maybe some people would say, well, there's so many women's business centers. There's so many programs for women. There's so many social services. Why did you need to create this one? Is exactly for the reasons you emphasize. I didn't find a home for immigrant women who wanted to contribute in ways that it was fair to them. Right? And so look, this country had given me permission in my country, well, not even my country, but I was in Papua New Guinea to help a women's chamber of commerce develop a women's chamber of commerce. And the government said, no, we have too many women's organizations. We don't need another one. And it was for free market and economy and profit, and everybody would benefit, right? So the government is against. In this country, whatever crazy idea you have that can make a world a better place, or in whichever direction you see the world going, you can build it here. That doesn't mean it's going to last. It doesn't mean it's going to succeed, but it is up to you, right? And that's where leadership kind of kicks in.
Yes, I agree. But I believe this needs a certain spirit that it has the spark, has the courage, has the connection. But most people, they really need, with the way I see the American system, they don't reach out to people. They leave them in their own. And the way I see capitalism now is like a crushing monster that push everybody to work and to survive by, if you don't work, I'll crush you. If you know, I feel that people who are weak are crushed. We don't need them. I mean, this is how capitalist society work, the way I see it. So this is why we need empowerment, to stand in the face of this crushing monster that will crush everybody's weak. So if you empower this, then they will not be as crushed, you know.
Right.
So now I feel with those immigrants, they need an organization that will unite them, empower them, encourage them, reach out to them, because many of them are shy. Many of them also, racism is another thing that they face in everyday life. Their culture, I mean, they can come with ideas from their culture that cannot fit easily. Their clothes, their food, their whatever. So there are so many obstacles. They need really a specific, unique way. And I think everybody will benefit if they are empowered. It does not look like it. Nobody.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a win-win situation, as I call the women at EWI agents of change and change makers. I also call them citizens, and I call them taxpayers. It's a win-win situation. I mean, I think America it's still as successful as it is because everybody contributes. Yeah, we do have some people that we need to bring into the fold. We do need to work harder. We need to work smarter. But the majority of people contribute to this economy and this society. Where you look overseas at several other countries, it's not the same kind of participation in the marketplace or in the civic space, right?
Yes, yes.
And so again, I'm looking at America with its ideology and its possibility. Of course, there's a lot of fixes. That, you know, the architecture is great, but it has a bunch of areas that need to be fixed because it's getting a little old here and there, and it's a new time that we're living in, and this new times brings a different kind of people and a different kind of thinking and a different kind of innovation. And I think America better catch up with 21st century and the global community we are, probably more global and more integrated with the communication and technology today than we ever been before, so we can continue to set a model in the world. But yes, I am an American, and yes, I believe that the American dream is within reach for everyone.
Okay.
It is a personal responsibility to wake up and to want to achieve that. I don't think anybody is going to give it to you, even if you deserve it.
I know, I agree, but still, do you have any advice for this society to reach out to those immigrants? You think did the American is the American society doing enough for immigrants? Can they do better?
I think it's a both-way street. I think we as Americans who've been here for a while have a tremendous responsibility to meet our neighbors and to welcome our neighbors. Much like somebody would meet in your neighborhood, you would go and say hello, you would introduce, it would be you, not the neighbor, right? I agree. I think we need to reach out more. We need to be more proactive. I personally, my philosophy is not about handouts and free this and free that, because I don't think that builds anything. That doesn't demonstrate anything, nor it teaches you something. But I believe that people should know what's available to them, what resources, where to look for a job, where is the community center, where is the library located. And it's very hard for me to know whether this happens. I don't believe we just opened an office in Herndon about a year ago. It's been incredibly difficult to let ourselves be known to the community, because the community doesn't read the newspaper. They're not finding us. We're not like in the middle of their neighborhood. There's neighborhoods and neighborhoods, and there's a lot of ground that we're covering. I mean,
wow.
North Virginia is a big region. Fairfax County is a big region. Herndon, Reston is, so you have these pockets of communities that are very isolated. And when you don't speak the language and you only live in your own area and you only go to your grocery store, and you are also abused, because in many of those cases we have abuse as a form of subservience and kind of keeping the woman down so she won't be visible, she won't cause trouble, she won't go to the police. Organizations like ours are very hard to be discovered. So we are going into their communities, reaching out with flyers, with people that speak the various languages that people communicate in. But again, it's not millions of us, so we can only reach what we can reach. So you can only say state organizations, the government do what they can, churches do what they can, nonprofit communities do what they can. You do require of the newcomer too to kind of come out and step out and look over the fence to see what's out there and walk a little bit in that direction. It's very hard. It's very hard when you're afraid. It's very hard when you don't speak the language. It's very hard if you're illegal, right? If you don't have the right documents. And we have many, many cases in our region of women that are brought undocumented and they're kept undercover. And it's a very, very complicated and complex experience, but you and I are out there, and all I can say is, like everybody else who is watching this program should join us and reach out and meet their neighbors. That's all it takes. I know from that point on, people know what to do with their life.
Yeah, I think also empowering them is a lot. It's a lot of work. It's not like you just inspire them and go.
Right.
I feel that they are, there are so much going on with there's a lot to deal with.
Right.
But so they need certain people, certain qualities, certain system. So I know we talked a lot about this, and I wish I can do more. But I will move now to know more about your own priorities, like everyday priorities when you wake up as a woman. What are your priorities?
Gosh, I'm a mother, so I have 2 children. I have a daughter in college who's 22, so she no longer is in the house, but she's still a priority, a very big one. I have my son who's 14, so he is a priority every morning. So I start my morning as a mother and I go to bed as a mother. My job in the morning is to get everybody, situated. The breakfast is being provided. I care about nutrition. I care about my son showing up in school dressed properly, had taken a shower and everything. So it's just pretty much a motherly job, right? Pretty
Yes.
boring kind of thing. I do get a couple of emails out of the way. I wake up very early, I work out, I check my emails, make sure that everything is in good order, and then get in the kitchen, do the kitchen job, take my son to school, and then go about my life, right? It's a very long day I spend in the office, and priorities change every day in the office. As the executive director, I pay attention a lot to my team and its leadership, just to make sure that they're doing the right thing, they're growing in the right directions, the programs are being delivered in the right way. There is both quality and we're meeting our deliverables, what we had promised to the society, to our donors. And I raise money. I have to be sure that this dream of mine continues, right? So a major focus of my work is to raise the money to keep the doors open and to continue to grow the organization. I end my day usually with a social event, not every day, but once every 2-3 days. I either have a class where I speak, I have an event where I speak, or I go to a networking session, and then it's home, where, insightful dinner conversations take place with my family, where we share very open about our everyday life, about the people we meet on the journey, their stories, how that is impacting us. And in fact, I have to tell you that if there is any secret to my life, is how my husband and I share our experiences from every day with our kids.
Oh, this is another
Yes.
corner that I would like to get in. How do you
Right.
view men, and specifically husband? How the relationship with a husband is important to empowerment?
Well, so my husband is a partner, and I view marriage as a partnership. I am very fortunate to be in a partnership that is infused with love and kindness and compassion and passion. But we hold each other accountable on the journey of marriage. He has his contribution and I have my contribution, and often we switch roles because we need to. As he travels a lot, I have to take my place and his place. And as I travel, or I am, engaged in a lot of projects that need maybe deeper attention, he steps in. So it's always been like this. And I have to tell you that that's another element of empowerment. I really think it takes a village. It's not enough to have a supportive community of sisters. I think you need to have a partner that gets it, that is in it with you for the same reasons you're in it with him. It's a tango. It takes both parties to come together and to unify in the dance.
Yeah, I think it's very important, in my opinion. I mean, the way I reached that point, that it is very important to work on a relationship, to make it functional, and work on it, improve it, reinvent it, make it. You can't just leave it. It will not happen, and it is empowering. The more you connect to your partner, the more empowered you are.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, maybe two more questions before we finish this first episode. I would like to know more about the title of your coming book. Do you have a title?
No, I don't.
You really
No,
not?
I don't. No, not at all. Actually, I will be seeking for a title as I write, because, there's been many things in my mind. I actually don't even know which direction am I going in. I just know the book is going to be about the making of my passion and dream to empower women, and it's been about 2 decades of journeying, about 13 years in the United States, about 7 years in Romania. There's many stories, many people, many ways in which empowerment has been manifested that I want to reflect, and I want to tell the story of it. But the purpose of the book actually is to really see that to sow that seed of inspiration that I was talking. I think my job as a citizen, as a writer, as a change maker, is not to tell you what to do, but is to share what I've done and how I did it, and to inspire you to follow your own heart. Because I think this is what empowerment is, when we begin to share our own stories and we open up with the story in the way that the story is, it allows everybody around us to join in with their own stories, and not all stories are comfortable. In fact, most of the stories are very uncomfortable. They don't all have happy endings and everybody was sincere and everything went very well and you had all the resources. It's the exact opposite, and that gives permission to people to follow their own journey and hearts and say, okay, well, she didn't have anything when she started. Okay, she didn't speak English. Okay, she could have been lost. There is hope. There is, again, permission.
And to put it in a book, you leave it, I think, when you read a book, it's different than you know about an organization, or you see a movie, or you can read it again and again and learn more. My last question is Oprah. I read that you are interested, or you wish that Oprah will know about EWI. So why Oprah?
I think she's an inspiration. She's somebody who has the stamina, the power, the voice to inspire others. And as we're still a very small organization. Empowered Women International is small. It's small in its size, it's small in its finances, but it's mighty in its vision and mission and in impact. I think we need to be discovered by somebody as inspiring and as prominent as Oprah to really get the visibility, like all those immigrants, to find us, and find us when they enter the country, not when they can no longer take it. So that's the vision, and hopefully she finds us.
Thank you so much, Marga, for being with us today here, and thank you for all what you do for women.
Thank you, Hanan. You have inspired me.
Thank you.